that hot mess that they air in the mornings called The View had to issue not one, not two, not three, but 4 corrections, legal corrections. Not to mention what they did at that debate, where once again, they tried to fact check only one side. And then when their fact checks got fact checked, they cowered. They cowered in fear. I mean, this is a pattern with them.
But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away.
That hot mess called The View didn't just stumble. They collapsed in full view of America. It wasn't a slip of the tongue or a misunderstanding. It was a full-blown, televised disaster that ended with legal panic and public humiliation. They were forced to issue not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 legal corrections, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other option. The walls were closing in, and the damage had already gone viral. But let's be clear. The apology didn't come from regret. It came from fear. Fear of a lawsuit so big and so loud it could shake daytime television to its core. And Charlie Kirk wasn't bluffing, not for a second. Charlie Kirk made it crystal clear. They were speaking to legal powerhouses, the kind that make billion-dollar networks sweat through their makeup. He said, "We're still entertaining it." And suddenly, The View's crew was scrambling for cover.
CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a
Whoopi Goldberg, usually the queen of snark and sarcasm, looked rattled in a way no one had ever seen before. This time, her meltdown wasn't theatrical. It was real, raw, and live. It wasn't Joy Behar's latest fashion flop that sent Whoopi into a frenzy. It was the cold, calculated takedown led by the unlikely tag team of Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly, and it shook the show to its core. In one moment, Whoopi was smug and settled, sipping on her own superiority like it was a warm latte. The next, she looked like someone had thrown cold water on her career, because that's exactly what had just happened. Charlie Kirk, the sharp-witted founder of Turning Point USA and the author of The College Scam, stepped onto the battlefield with zero fear and full ammunition. He didn't stutter. He didn't blink. He said, "Do our students accept it?" And the whole studio froze. This wasn't just about him. It was about 5,000 high school and college students who had been smeared on national television. Young Americans who traveled across the country to learn, only to be painted as extremists by people too lazy to do their research. Whoopi had ruled her table for years, silencing guests with a smirk and shutting down debate with a dramatic pause. But not today. Today, the table turned, and Whoopi couldn't flip it back. Megyn Kelly didn't come in loud. She didn't come in swinging. She came in silent and surgical, dismantling Whoopi's narrative like a skilled attorney laying out evidence in front of a jury. Where Charlie Kirk came in like a battering ram, Megyn Kelly was the scalpel. She cut through every lie, every half-truth, every dramatic distraction, until all that was left was Whoopi's uncomfortable silence.
Disgusting. She's Anna Navarro in your wildest imagination. You could never solo host a show. You will only ever make it as part of an ensemble, and you could never hope to achieve the success that Tucker Carlson has. So you can sit in your little cheap seats all day long and enjoy your little negative henpecking, but your careers are going nowhere, and Tucker is about to dominate in whatever space he
The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit.
And that silence, it said everything. No quips, no comebacks, just the cold, hard reality of being called out with precision and without mercy. Kirk and Kelly weren't responding to a bad day. They were dragging a pattern of elitism, smugness, and misinformation into the public square. And the crowd? They weren't just watching. They were cheering. Kirk called it what it was: a smear campaign on innocent students who had done nothing but attend a conservative conference. And The View didn't just lie. They tried to frame the entire event as dangerous. When Kirk said, "You don't get to smear kids and walk away," it hit like a gavel in a courtroom. It wasn't a soundbite. It was a warning shot, loud enough to rattle every teleprompter in that studio. And then came the smoking gun. Behind-the-scenes footage, unseen by the public, suddenly released like a bombshell. It showed Joy Behar joking about flustering the guest before the show started. It showed Sonny Hostin smirking with agreement. It showed intent. The moment the footage aired, everything changed. This wasn't speculation anymore. It was premeditated character assassination caught on camera. The audience gasped. The producers panicked. And Whoopi, she went ghost. The View wasn't caught in an accident. They were caught in a lie, a scripted takedown dressed up as a spontaneous debate. And the worst part? They underestimated who they were dealing with. What Charlie and Megyn did next wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a reckoning, a calculated, merciless takedown of a show that forgot the golden rule. When you throw stones from a glass set, eventually someone throws back. The footage didn't just expose the moment, it exposed the mindset. The View didn't make a mistake. They followed a playbook, one where they target, ridicule, and isolate anyone who doesn't bow to their narrow worldview. Whoopi's face during the playback said it all. Gone was the usual swagger.
And there was what do you call it? This Turning Points conference with all the smoke. What are they smoking something down there? Or it's like whatever. Anyway, they were out there. Who are in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs.
Whoa, the drama. Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, threatened to sue The View. And let me tell you, the nonsense that ensued is really
Replaced by a look of frozen disbelief. She wasn't moderating anymore. She was unraveling live, and the cameras didn't dare cut away. Megyn Kelly didn't have to raise her voice once. She just walked through the timeline, piece by piece, like a detective revealing the twist the audience never saw coming. And at the center of it all was Whoopi, stunned, speechless, exposed. It wasn't just a takedown, it was a public autopsy of everything The View had become. Not a talk show, but a smug echo chamber where dissenting views get mocked and facts get filtered through partisan emotion. Charlie Kirk lit the match, but Megyn Kelly brought the gasoline. While Kirk called out the lies, Megyn made sure the receipts were read aloud, underlined, and permanently burned into the audience's memory. Whoopi, the once untouchable titan of daytime TV, looked smaller than ever before, as clip after clip showed her tossing out half-baked takes without evidence or accountability. And this time, someone finally said, "Enough." Charlie pointed to the hypocrisy like it was a neon sign. They mocked teenagers for attending a conference, but praised violent protesters as brave. The crowd didn't need prompting. They were already nodding in agreement. And the worst part? The View had tried to compare conservative students inside the Turning Point conference to the anti-Semitic fringe protesters outside, two totally different groups, lumped together in one reckless statement. Whoopi tried to walk it back. She tried to say, "My bad." She had just spilled coffee on the carpet. But Charlie Kirk wasn't having it, and neither was Megyn. The damage was already done, and the internet had receipts. That flimsy apology came too late and meant too little. It wasn't regret, it was a PR maneuver, and everyone knew it. The world had already seen the intent, and no scripted apology was going to put that genie back in the bottle. Charlie turned that moment into a megaphone. He took clips, comments, and contradictions and lit up every platform, from podcasts to Twitter to cable news, and the momentum snowballed.
Asked him about that. They asked him about that moment. Watch this, South 36.
The vice president was here. I asked her if she would have done something differently than your administration over the past 4 years. And because of all the successes that your administration had, I think her response was, "There is not a thing that comes to mind." Now, that answer was weaponized against her. And there has been some reporting that you...
People weren't just sharing the takedown. They were celebrating it. For the first time in years, someone had stood toe-to-toe with The View and refused to back down. The takedown was surgical, yes, but it was also personal. And then came Megyn Kelly with her closing arguments. She didn't scream, she didn't rant, she just exposed Whoopi's long-running habit of throwing half-truths around like glitter, hoping no one would call her out. Megyn called it exactly what it was, a pattern of smug elitism, a performance of righteousness with no research, and a dangerous platform that disguises propaganda as personality. She didn't even need new material. She simply played back Whoopi's greatest hits of hypocrisy, line after line of contradictions, judgments, and misinformation that had been aired without a second thought. And Whoopi, she didn't clap back this time. Her silence was the loudest moment of all. It wasn't because she had nothing to say, it was because she knew she'd finally been cornered by facts, not feelings. Even long-time fans of The View were squirming in their seats. The laughter had stopped. The snark had turned to shock. And suddenly, the Queen of Daytime looked like she didn't belong on the throne anymore. The internet exploded in response. TikToks, memes, remixes, clips of Whoopi's silence played over dramatic soundtracks like it was the finale of a reality show where the star just got voted off. The ratings may have survived the week, but the legacy, that took the real hit. Whoopi's brand of loud certainty had finally been met with louder truth, and it cracked the illusion open like glass under pressure. Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly didn't just shut her down. They exposed a broken machine that had been running on fumes for years. And once the audience saw the gears behind the curtain, there was no going back. What made this moment so powerful wasn't just the takedown, it was the shift in the room. For the first time, Whoopi looked like she knew the audience wasn't on her side anymore. That familiar applause, gone. It wasn't about politics anymore, it was about truth versus ego.
Disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
Did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever.
And ego had finally lost. Charlie Kirk didn't show up to spar. He showed up to expose. And he did it with precision, confidence, and undeniable facts. Megyn Kelly sealed it by doing what so few in media ever do. She didn't perform, she presented. She didn't try to go viral, but somehow every word she said spread like wildfire anyway. The digital fallout was instant. Hashtags erupted. Clips trended. Every platform lit up with side-by-side videos of Whoopi stumbling, while Megyn calmly dismantled her argument one fact at a time. It was the kind of exposure that doesn't fade in a news cycle. It lingers, it festers, and it makes people start asking the one question networks fear the most. Wait, how long has this been happening? That's what made the takedown so devastating. It wasn't just one lie being corrected, it was an entire culture of smug misinformation finally being dragged out into the light and held accountable. For years, Whoopi's word had been treated like scripture on that panel, but now it sounded like noise. The spell was broken, and the silence that followed told the real story. Even Sunny Hostin, who normally doubles down in chaos, looked shaken. Her usual smirks and side comments vanished, replaced by awkward glances and stiff posture. The panic had spread. The View didn't just suffer a PR hit, they suffered a credibility collapse, one that no clever segment, no celebrity guest, and no follow-up apology could patch back together. Charlie Kirk made it crystal clear. This wasn't the end. "We're not dropping it," he said. "You don't get to smear 5,000 kids and move on like nothing happened."
I don't want to say too much, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the Department of Education. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Can I tell you something? Like, I've had quite a few people contact me about that particular post. Like, I'm sure I have 1/100th of what you're getting, but people are contacting me about cabinet posts. I'm like, I got
look,
nothing.
I mean, yeah, I'm actually, after this conversation, heading to Mar-a-Lago for a week, and we have a lot to sift through, and if I could be helpful, I have asked. I want to be actively involved in all things education, as you can imagine.
It didn't help that The View had turned into a group project where everyone thinks they're the
And people agreed. Megyn Kelly echoed that with quiet force. "Being on TV doesn't make you right," she said. "Doing your homework does." And that line hit like a thunderclap across the airwaves. This wasn't just a media scolding. It was a cultural moment, a reminder that no one, not even the self-proclaimed queens of daytime TV, are above correction. And maybe that's what scared them most. Not the lawsuit, not the backlash, but the realization that the illusion was gone. The audience now saw them clearly, and they weren't impressed. Whoopi once sat like a monarch at that table, but now she looked like a relic, clinging to outdated power in a room that had moved on without her. The confidence shattered. The meltdown wasn't dramatic. It was slow, awkward, and deeply human, and that's what made it unforgettable. It wasn't a burst of rage, it was a quiet collapse, inch by inch. The final blow came not with shouting, but with silence. A moment where Whoopi looked into the camera and knew, this time, the internet wasn't laughing with her. It was laughing at her. And when the next episode aired, everything felt different. The energy had shifted. The usual jokes fell flat. The chemistry was off, and even the audience applause sounded forced. What Kirk and Kelly had done wasn't just a takedown. It was a wake-up call to every platform that confuses opinion with authority. The days of unchecked arrogance might finally be numbered. In the end, Whoopi didn't storm off. She didn't cry. She just sat there, still, silent, and visibly stunned. It wasn't a tantrum. It was the quiet realization that she had been bested. And while The View continues to spin in its same old chair, something changed forever that day. A line was crossed, and this time The response wasn't a headline. It was a reckoning. Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly didn't just shut down a segment. They shut down a legacy, a media empire built on ego, shaken to its core in one unforgettable showdown that people will be talking about for years.